Okay, I'm going to do an installation of Microsoft Windows Server 2012. It became generally available today, September 4th, 2012. And here we have the vSphere client. So what you just saw was Veeam pushing the file to my data store. And in that data store, if I show you the data store browser, what we have is an ISO folder, and it's got what we need. Okay, so we've got the hypervisor version, hypervisor only version, and the full version from MSDN, 3.6 gig. Let's go ahead and get started. Right-click, New Virtual Machine. Typical. Now, I like to give it a name like that. So instead of a host name, I go with all uppercase and the word template. It makes it really stand out because that's my goal, is to make this a template and then deploy copies of that template, which become my VMs that I use and kick the tires on. Okay, let's change it to Windows Server 2012 64-bit. I should point out that I am on ESXi 5.1. I'm just going to hit next, next, next. We can change that network adapter to a better one later on after the initial install. So I need to keep an eye on my data store. I'm on a solid state where I clearly don't have that much space, but I'm thin provisioning to fake it. That way the Windows Server instance itself doesn't need its C drive resize, which is a bit of a hassle. I obviously have to keep an eye on my SSD-based data store to make sure I don't fill it up, which is a bad thing with solid state. You don't want to get past like 90% full. Okay, now why do I need to edit this? Well, because we haven't mounted the DVD ISO. Let's go ahead and do that. Make sure Connect on Power On is checked. I usually do that right away to try to avoid forgetting that. And there you have it. So, 1 CPU, 4 gig of RAM, that should do it to get started. Now during the beta period, sometimes I had to play with the version of Windows. We'd have to lie. We'd also have to play with UEFI BIOS. Now that it's released to manufacturer, and I'm using ESXi 5.1, I am curious to see how this install goes. I have not rehearsed this. This is the very first attempt. Okay, that's gray. So it's insisting on us handling a license key. I'm going to grab one now. Okay, I should point out that data center key would not work, but standard key did work. So I'm going to go with standard server with GUI. Custom install, because there is no operating system. 750 gig, yep. Click next. And there we go. The files are being copied. Okay, we're resuming. Look at the install here. Upper, lower, letters and numbers, I believe, are enforced on that initial password. Okay, Control Insert sends Control Delete to the virtual machine console. So once we get the desktop here, naturally we're going to want to go ahead and install VMware Tools and see if that installation is uneventful and straightforward. Okay, Server Manager's running. Mouse is jumpy as can be expected. And if we hit Windows plus X, we get this key administrative pop-up to bring up Device Manager. So naturally, things like network adapters are not optimal yet, and display adapter. We're going to fix all that with good old VMware Tools. So on this very first boot, I'm going to go ahead and give it a shot. Right-click on the VM. Oops. Right-click on the VM and say Guest, install VMware Tools. Quick look at the operating system size on disk. Uh, 11.4 gig. Another thing I'll just point out is I like to show all these icons, especially during early install. And I also want to set the clock to the right time zone. And turn off auto syncing. I'd rather use VMware Tools to do that. You'll see that coming up here. Okay, so we got the clock right. VMware Tools. I think it did briefly pop up. I missed it, but could click on the installer there, or we could just double click the drive. Okay. VMware Tools installation underway. The version of VMware Tools you get is dictated by the bundled version that's in your version of ESXi 5.1. So this is my first test with ESXi 5.1 in what's expected to be the final build, RTM, coupled with Windows Server 2012, which is definitely the release to manufacture version. Okay, tools install next. Typical is fine. Next, install. Now, if you think you might move this virtual machine over to VMware Workstation somewhere else, you might want to do a full install for maximum compatibility and ability to move it all over the place. So my mouse will seamlessly move in and out of this virtual machine once the proper VMware branded mouse driver is installed. And we should also get an optimized video driver. Not just the generic WDDM driver from Microsoft, but the VMware 3D adapter. So the virtual machine has settings related to video. If we take a look at those, see that Enable 3D support is on. It's a server OS. This should be fine. We don't really care. Probably going to use remote desktop connection anyway to connect to this for smoothest, fastest experience on a local network. So once VMware Tools is installed, naturally, the usual reboot is required. Once we've rebooted, we'll have a tray icon for VMware Tools. And we're going to want to set it to sync the clock with the host. See if we can get some insight into what the holdup is here. Nothing. It's working. Just takes a little while in the middle there. All right. Even on a solid state drive, apparently. Not the fastest solid state, a little older, but that's okay. It's finished. We're going to reboot Tools like we usually do. I'm going to say no to reboot. I just have one more thing I want to check. If I hit Windows and W, okay, that didn't work. How about under apps? Same search. That worked. This is a lab machine. Do I want to enter the password every boot? Not necessarily. Okay, so it's no longer going to ask me for a password when I reboot. And we can also look at power profile. Change when the computer sleeps. Do we want the display to ever turn off in a virtual machine? No, not really. And look here that when, okay, sleep is on never. Yep. So that's all set. And tools may or may not come up. Yeah, we can't do anything. Okay, so it's time to go ahead and reboot. Because Tools is installed, that worked. Now it's rebooting. What we should see is it to auto log on right to the desktop. That was quite fast. Very nice. And VMware Tools takes a little longer to come up. Once the service starts for VMware Tools, the icon will show. Okay, that's interesting. Setting the clock is not there. All right. Well, let's wrap this up here with the template creation. I've got a VM, it's DHCP fed, and the network is not optimized. It's the default driver that works, but it says public, that's one problem. But also, it's a gigabit. So the optimized driver that they want us to use is a different one. So I'm going to go ahead and shut down. And I actually don't technically have to shut down for changing the network adapter. Just kind of keeping it clean. Right-click, edit settings. We're done with DVD install, so we can do that. Back in the network adapter, we're going to remove that one, and we want to add an optimized one. VMXnet 3. So this is pretty much drawing to a close my initial install of Windows Server 2012 as a virtual machine. Obviously the install was very straightforward, and as you would expect, VMware Tools installed fine, the mouse is seamless. Now we're testing if the new network adapter works fine. So we're in the home stretch here on the very basic installation and configuration of Windows Server 2012 RTM under ESXi 5.1 RTM. So assuming we get console and video here shortly, should be able to go ahead and test out that new network adapter. Okay, while we wait for video, I'm going to hit Control Escape to release my mouse. Let's click on the Summary tab. It has an IP address, and it says tools are running. So for whatever reason, we still have blank video. Okay, we have video now. Mouse moving seamlessly in and out. How about the network adapter? VMXnet 3, so that's good. DHCP, Ethernet 2, that's just normal how it enumerates them. If you rename it as you deploy from template, I believe it gets renamed anyway, so there's not much point in cleaning that up. Now it is saying public network. That's annoying because that has firewall implications as well. So for a server on a local network in a home, LAN here, lab, local network, well, it's kind of an issue having this as public. I have found multiple workarounds documented out there. One that seems to work is good old hard coding of the DHCP IP. So let's start with hitting Windows R, open up the command prompt, 116. So because we're not controlling over remote desktop connection, but we're controlling over local, notice now that I've hard-coded the IP, it went, oh, I thought I saw it say private. Nope, still public. All right, let's see if right-clicking here, clicking on System, you'll see my domain name, that it needs activation, which we'd want to do after cloning from template. And remote settings. Remote settings should be on, or should be set to allow remote connections. It's doing a firewall exception. And I want older RDP, or remote desktop protocol connections to be compatible, so I went with a little less lockdown approach. Again, this is a lab machine to kick the tires on. If we right-click down here again, let's try that again. And go to Device Manager. Let's have a quick look at Display Adapter. There it is, VMware S3. All right. Look at dates in these things. Late May. March. May. April. Okay. So we're now able to go ahead and shut that virtual machine down. Oh, never did get the clock set. So I guess I'll just go ahead and go back to atomic time syncing until I figure that out. And before rebooting probably makes a lot of sense to try a remote desktop connection from my host machine. So I'm trying that now. Okay, remember the IP address? Well, we don't have to remember it. We just click on Summary, and it says it right there, 116. Okay, we're in. Sure is a rather black desktop, a little bit odd, but okay, so we're shutting down the VM. Because we're done creating that master template. And now we're ready to right-click, template, and say convert to template. At the bottom we watch, it's done. Now we just click here for VMs and templates and look for the thing we just created. Begins with the giant word template. Ends with server 2012. So there it is. So we can just right-click on it and say deploy virtual machine from this template. Okay, I got to think of a decent name. That's a decent name, so that's my host name. It also tells me the operating system, so I'll keep it simple, and that's it for this one. Same format as source. Remember, it was thin provisioned, so we don't need to fiddle with that. It's still going to be thin provisioned. And we don't want to customize it. Powering it on after cloning? Sure, that's fine. And click Finished. So now very rapidly we're seeing it make a copy, a clone. Also keep in mind, it's probably a good time to go ahead and click here back on Hosts and Clusters if you're more used to. And of course you can use the VMware web client for everything we just did as well. This will go very quickly on a solid state to deploy from a template like that. And then it's going to go ahead and boot up. So to get ready for that, go to the console view. So now it says completed. Took about 6 minutes. We should get video soon here of the console booting for the first time on this clone. There we go. So it's up. Naturally, we can change the screen resolution as well at this point. Okay, so there you have it. A quick look. Well, not so quick look at Windows Server 2012, released to manufacturer build 9200. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and thank you for watching.